you all for being here for our very first event of Black History Month. This is a panel discussion called Our Westfield, the Black Experience. And what we wanted to do was to bring in people from the Black community in Westfield that have been here for a number of years that could share their experiences and what they remember about Westfield. We have, we're sort of tongue-in-cheek calling this our panel of Westfield elders. Thank you so much for being here today to share their insights and experiences that span almost a century in our town. I hope that you'll glean perspectives and understanding from the experiences that they've had. And our panelists today are Mary Withers. If you want to, when I say your name, if you want to just give a wave for anyone who doesn't know you. Wallace Brown. Joyce Pretlow. And unfortunately, Gladys Edwards wasn't able to join us today, but Ron Holmes is here to fill in as best he can, right? So I'm just going to give a brief introduction for each of the panelists. Mary Withers is a longtime resident of Westfield, was one of the founders of the Westfield Neighborhood Council in 1967, and is presently on its board of directors. She's also a member of the Westfield Historical Society. She is the former owner of Blackberry's Catering in Plainfield and established in Westfield as a caterer specializing in Southern foods. Thank you, Mary, for being here. Wallace Brown, a Korean War veteran, was born in Westfield in 1931. He was the first African-American special agent in the Criminal Investigation Division in New Jersey and served on the Secret Service Presidential Detail. He has been a longtime member of the Centennial Elks Lodge and has served as president and trustee of the Westfield Community Center. Thank you, Wallace. Joyce Pretlow is a lifelong Westfield resident. She has served with the Westfield Community Center for over 40 years as its former president of the board of directors and current trustee. She is a member of the Westfield Historical Society, including the Westfield 300 African American History Subcommittee, and a longtime member of Bethel Baptist Church. And I know that Gladys wasn't able to join us today, but I do want to read her bio just so you know a little bit more about her. Gladys Edwards celebrated her 100th birthday in August 2023 and has lived in Westfield for over 60 years. She served on the board of directors of the Westfield Community Center, was the secretary of the Negro History Club, volunteered at the McGinley School Library, was a Cub Scout den mother, and has been a member of the MLK Association of Westfield for many decades. And again, thank you, Ron, so much for helping us out today. So I have a few questions that I'm gonna ask our panelists to respond to and share whatever they would like. Towards the end, I'm going to ask them to tell me what I didn't ask but should have, so that they can respond to that. And then we'll have questions from the audience if you have any questions you'd like to ask. So can you each start by telling us how you came to live in Westfield? Whether you were born in Westfield or whether you moved here at some point. But if you could just tell us the story of how you came to be in Westfield. And if you want to start, Wallace.
Well, this gentleman right here, this Dr. Howard F. Brock, delivered me in 1931. Wow. So I'm 92 years of age as of now. That's how I came to live in Westfield. They used to give us a lollipop when we got our shots and everything like that. I'll never forget that.
My mother came to Westfield from Florida. They were truck farmers. And so in the summer months, they would come up to New York State in a caravan, which basically was an 18-wheeler that had a canvas top, and they would spend the season and then they would go back. Well, my mom brought us up, had someone bring us up, I should say, and we met in Rochester, around Rochester, and then we came to live in Westfield. And we started a series of houses that we lived in. We lived in attics, we lived in first floor apartments with living privileges. And so our homes for the first 7 or 8 years in Westfield were with other people. And then in 1961, roughly, my mom remarried and we purchased a home. And that home is where she has lived, we have lived since then.
Thank you. I came to live in Westfield because I was born in Muhlenberg Hospital because there were no hospitals in Westfield, and I've been here my entire life.
Wow.
Started school at McKinley.
And
And
sorry, I'm not originally from this area. Could you tell me about that hospital? You said that.
Muhlenberg Hospital, Plainfield, New Jersey.
Okay.
Okay, and McKinley School is, you know, okay, and I went off with the Westfield school systems, and besides myself, I had 5 siblings, and they all attended McKinley School, and then I happened to be able to move back, stay in Westfield, but live on West Broad, and my 3 children went to McKinley School.
And Mary, how about you? Can you tell us how you came to live in Westfield?
I came to Westfield because my brother was sick. He lived here, and in the olden days, if somebody in the family had to come and nurse them back to good health. So that's how I came to Westfield. My brother lived at 629 Cumberland Street, and I've been here ever since. I met my husband here, my children were born here, and it's been a wonderful experience.
That's great, thank you. So a few of you have sort of alluded to this, but maybe you can tell us a little more about it. What do you remember about your first home, the first place you lived in Westfield?
I was born at 648 West Broad Street, like we all were. Everybody was born in a house. Dr. Brock came to the house and delivered me from my mom to Westfield.
And do you
648 West Broad Street. They just tore it down and built a new house there within the past 3 years.
so that was where Dr. Brock, that was where he practiced medicine?
Right.
Okay.
West Broad Street. 417 West Broad Street.
And pardon me, but can you tell us what year that was?
1931.
Wow.
I'm blessed. I'm still here. I saw my house get torn down before I got it. At 648 West Broad Street. Wasn't nothing but fields up there. We used to go up there to play. Scotch Plains Avenue. The circus used to come to town and be there. Fireworks and all. And you heard someone talk about town yards being up there. I remember that, but they didn't put them there. So they put the park there, the pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, the first home, when my folks purchased the home, when my mom remarried, we were looking for a home in Westfield, and we couldn't find one. They kept directing us to Elizabeth, Plainfield, and I always thought there was a certain irony in that if I had, in fact, moved to Plainfield, you guys wouldn't have won. A couple of those football games, but at any rate, we were through a friend, Deacon Townsend, member of our church, that knew a lady that had a home available. And so we were able to purchase it, and my mom, actually my stepdad, who was his employer was Robert Stevens, the Secretary of the Army. He was a chauffeur to him. And so when we purchased the home, he sent his carpenter over and helped us do the renovation, on that home. Yeah.
How about you, Joyce? What do you remember about your first home in Westfield?
I lived on West Broad Street in the Black professional zone. However, my parents were not professionals. We just happened to be there. And eventually they did move to North Scotch Plains Avenue.
Is there anything that sort of sticks with you about your home sort of all this time later when you were growing up, especially I guess living in the Black professional zone, maybe some of the neighbors or other people that were living there?
I have to say that I was kind of in the middle of it all, and all the professionals there in Westfield were very pleasant people. My father was not born here in Westfield, but came here at an early age, and he knew everybody. He knew everybody, so it was always a warm atmosphere. It was just pleasant. They were just nice people, everyday people.
Thank you.
Yes, the first apartment that I had was at 412 Broadway Avenue. Then I was chosen to be one of the anti-poverty people that they would help us purchase a home. So that home was 205 Capiola Place. And that was through the anti-poverty program that I became a homeowner, my husband and I.
Thank you. So my next question is, what did you and your friends, what do you remember doing for fun with your family and friends growing up in Westfield?
Well, I personally had fun being myself. Basically trying to preach funerals for cats and dogs that got killed. My father said I got my calling, but I didn't answer. And I remember my mother always telling me, God does not like ugliness. And I couldn't understand what that meant. But anyhow, what we did for fun was listen to the radio, and then when the TV came in 1948, I remember we had TV. We looked at TV, but my mother did the stories. Stella Dallas, I remember that one all the time. And of course, The Shadow was coming on at 5 o'clock on Sunday. So, and then the circus used to come to town on Scotch Plains Avenue, and we have fireworks. So the family enjoyed all those things that the town of Westfield provided.
Thank you.
We were poor. I mean, just come right out and say it. We were poor. And so fun for us was actually being together with an occasional something that would, as an example, on Sunday, my mom would go to, what's the name of the, Roots, is it? Rex Roots, but it was one of the, yeah. But she would buy a pint of orange sherbet and a pack of salted nuts, and we looked forward to that sherbet and those nuts. Very, very simple things.
I do remember as a child the circus that was on North Scotch Plains Avenue. We got to go to the circus, and most of the time we played in the yard and had fun, or went up to the playground at McGinley School where they had sliding boards and swings, and most of the kids in the neighborhood were there with us, including Ronald, who I we've known each other a long time. And so we had fun, just general fun. And I think kids had fun. And the one thing I remember about the playground at McKinley School, all the kids, there were a lot of children in the area, but somehow at 5 o'clock, everybody knew to go home, and everybody sat down and had dinner together.
What do you remember about your first home in Westfield? Well,
Actually-
Cacchiola Place was not the perfect place to live because it was labeled the poor neighborhood. My husband would always say, we live at 205 Cacchiola, and what goes on the outside, it goes on the outside, but what goes on in our home is to raise our children and to be good citizens. I always volunteered with the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. Lisa's here right now, I can remember her, with the kids, and just always tried to be a person that could be at the neighborhood council or volunteering at the school or just trying to be a good citizen.
Is there anything else that you remember, Mary, you and your family doing for fun as you were growing up in Westfield?
Well, yeah, we started a playground down on the middle of Cacchiola Place where the apartments are now, and played cards, drank beer, danced, had a real good time. Yeah. Robert Turner, Janice's mother and father had a pool in the back of their house. We'd go down there and play in the pool and just have a wonderful time. Neighbors were neighbors then, so we really enjoyed ourselves.
Thank you. So, where did you go to school in Westfield, and what was it like? Do you want to start, Wallace?
I went to McKinley School. I remember Mr. Hinman, he was the principal. Mrs. Carberry was my kindergarten teacher. Miss Kirby was my 4th grade teacher. Miss Cowley was my 5th grade teacher. She used to go to Brazil all the time and bring us back coconuts. And then I left there and went to Roosevelt Junior High School. That's where I started playing football at Roosevelt Junior High School. That was in 1947, 48. And then to Westfield High School, graduate class of 1951, Westfield High School. And then I went to the United States Marine Corps my senior year. It was great going to school in Westfield. My friends.
I went to McKinley School also. Coming from the South, they held me back for a year. Kind of a social adjustment, I guess. They expected that you needed, which we didn't. But I enjoyed McKinley. I enjoyed it especially, and I should say when I go back to the issue of fun, I was speaking for my mom, not for me. Okay, you know, I had a lot of fun. Okay, as we all did as children. There was no reason for us not to have fun. You know, we played in the gutters with sticks, popsicle sticks. You know, we did all those kind of fun things. But my mom basically worked 2 to 3 jobs the whole time until she remarried. My mom worked. So fun was being able to be with us and do simple things, and I think that's what she would claim as being her fun activity.
What about after McKinley? Where did you go to school?
I went to I went to Edison Junior High School, which was at that time a newer school. It was interesting because we had kids that were the nouveau riche, we considered them. Okay, that were moving in behind, and so you had a lot of different cultural things, you know, going on. A lot of different cliques, a lot of different, you know, and so just as an example, I can remember the kids that I hung out with, which I was greatly criticized for, We used to have hoot nannies. You remember hoot nannies, anybody? We used to have
What's a hootenanny?
hoot nanny, this back in the folk era, and so you'd get together in someone's backyard with a guitar, okay, and sing songs and roast marshmallows, and I had a very full, I thought, experience, in Westfield schools, and then I went first to the high school, which was also fun. And then I graduated and went to Strasbourg University. But my education experience in Westfield, I'll sum it up this way. I graduated about 10th from the bottom of my class. I did not like the way that I was educated in Westfield High School. I thought they made some assumptions about me that were just, and so I fought the whole time. And I know there were other young black folks that had that same issue. And so I was just in a constant act of defiance and warfare with Westfield school system. That's right.
And what year was that you graduated?
I graduated in '66.
Thank you.
Excuse me, could I ask you to speak really into the microphone? Because elders back here, like me, may not be here.
Okay.
Really directly into the microphone.
Can you hear me?
Much better!
Okay. I started McGinley School and went through McGinley School, and then when I went to 7th grade, they were in the process of building Edison Junior High because the population had grown so much. And what I did in 7th grade, we did half sessions. The south side of town went to school from 7:30 until noontime, and from noontime until 3 o'clock, the north side of town. And in December of that year, I don't remember the year, Edison opened, and everybody, we went to school on a regular schedule. Went to the high school, and I had good experience in the Westfield school system. No problem. I just, last year I attended a 60th class anniversary, and it was really great. I had a wonderful time. I will say that out of, I guess, 400 kids, only about maybe 80 people showed up, and I was the only black person there, but I had a fantastic time. These are people you've known for a very long time, so we were all just comfortable with each other. I had no problem, and I will say I sent 3 children through the Westfield school system also, and I had no problem. And I like the Westfield school system. The one thing I will say is that when we did half sessions, we went to Elm Street School, which is now the Board of Education, and those steps from the they were 3 flights of steps, and I can remember real vividly. It was summertime, and they had a fire drill, and I was in the 3rd floor, and I had a teacher, Mr. Pfizer, nicest man in the world, but Mr. Pfizer apparently had injured his leg, so Mr. Pfizer had to struggle down those 3 flights of stairs because there were no elevators there, and then by the time you got a bunch of 7th graders back up those 3 flights of stairs and put back in that room, whoa, it was unbelievable. It's like, wow. But I remember, and right now I'm in the process of working with the Westfield Historical Society, and I go over there every Tuesday, but they have an elevator now, and because I couldn't do it, bad knees, and I can remember things that happened, but again, my experience and my children's experience in Westfield were good, very positive.
I didn't go to the Westfield school system, but my children did. My oldest daughter is 62, and they weren't the best experience. I guess because you lived on Kakiola Place, you were labeled, and they wanted to put the kids in special learning classes, and I guess when they saw me coming, they knew I was going to speak up against that. And I still speak up against children being labeled. I think that the area that you live in should not label who you are. And I think that I think the experience Ron had elderly gentleman, till the time that my kids have went to school, very little has changed. So I'm glad that Joyce had a wonderful experience, but my grandson lived with me for a while. He had an opportunity to be in the accelerated learning classes, and the principal called me and said to me, well, Frank has been chosen to go in the advanced learning classes, and there's a lot of paperwork that has to be filled out, and I don't think that you can do it. I said, well, I will get Mr. Nixon or Mrs. Nixon to help me fill out these papers. So I go over there to see what the papers were, and it was a transportation paper to go to Edison School. I said, this is what you're telling me, that these are the papers that I have to fill out, and it was just a permission to give him to go over to Edison School to the advanced learning classes. And his experience was not that well either. The kids were very prejudiced, and I think that prejudice starts at home. Kids know what their parents teach them. So I feel that, you know, some of the things that are going on currently, the parents are at blame, not the children, but the parents. So Frank is an engineer now. He went to NJIT, and Westfield school system did play a part in that, along with his parents and his grandparents. When my daughter came back to Westfield, she moved to Piscataway, and Frank graduated from Piscataway High School, and it was so much different than the system here in Westfield.
I didn't know if the program for the advanced learning was based on geographical location, because Frank had a problem. My youngest son, Brandon, I got a call from the principal at McGinley School, I don't remember who it was, telling me that Brandon had scored in the 98th percentile of the Iowa testing, and they wanted to put him in the advanced learning program. And they asked me, is it okay? And I said, yes. And so again, it could be geographical. She was on Catfield, I was on West Broad Street. But I had no problem, and he had no problem with any of the problems. Any problems were created by Brandon. And Brandon has done well. He's facilities manager for the Salesforce, a Microsoft company in New York, and he's an entrepreneur. He's owner of about 3 or 4 apartment houses, and he's got a contract with the city of Irvington to refurbish some homes, and he's already done 2 or 3. So he did okay. I thank God for that.
I wanted to just go back just a little bit.
Yeah, please, Ron.
When I was going through my war with the education process in Westfield and getting terrible grades, one of the things that happened was that I was going to lose my eligibility to play sports. And so the guidance counselor, coaches brought my mom over, and they told her that they were afraid that I was going to quit school. And they said, because she had told them if his grades don't go up, you know, I'm going to take him off these teams. You know, he's not going to play sports. And so, don't do that, Mrs. Sullivan. It'll destroy him. You know, he needs to be in the and so basically that was their solution, is to have me play sports to get through the education, you know, process. And I had showed no other aptitude, I guess, despite the fact that in my junior year I went to New Jersey Boys State and was my party's candidate for governor. And so they didn't have any other basis for making that decision that I was on this.
How do you feel now about that experience and about the role that sports played?
Well, that's the reason why I put that board up back there, because I'm sure I'm not the only one. You know, that went through that. I know I'm not good. sure I'm not the only one that went through that experience. You know, I know that there were issues with Frank Jackson, who I think graduated from Yale, who at one time, you know, it indicated that he wasn't, they thought maybe college material. There were others. Janet probably can tell more than I can about that. But that was one of the issues with Westfield, you know, and especially as an athlete, you know, if they got their mileage out of you and they really didn't care what happened to you academically. Another one of the people on that board back there was a world champion wrestler. World champion wrestler, two-time NCAA champ. He had to pay his fare to go out and go to a junior college, okay, before he was able to get into the University of Iowa. Westfield did not take good care of its black athletes, and it's something that we need to, I think, look at, because it continues to this day, from what I hear, anecdotal stories about what's happening. The fact that, you know, we have people like Tamika Dixon, you know, who was a professional basketball player that couldn't play in Westfield because of the coaching situation that she encountered. And there are others that have that same issue, so, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So my next question is to ask, what kind of work do you remember your parents doing? Do you want to respond to that, Wallace?
Okay, work, can you hear me? Yeah. Work, I'm gonna go back to my great-great-grandparents. My great-grandparent was a lamplighter in the town of Westfield. After that, my grandfather became livery stables with horses. Then the horseless carriage came. And then my brothers with cars, I had 8 brothers. They all didn't live, 2 died at birth almost. But there was 9 straight boys and 1 girl. A baseball team and an umpire. Anyhow, my father worked for P.J. Winfeld as a grocery clerk or whatever, I don't know, but he used to drive an electric truck. And the kids used to tease me all the time that when my father saw me at the playground over here by McKinley School, that he would point and meant for me to go home. And I had to race that truck and beat that truck home. Because he'd say, be here before I get there, and I had to outrun that truck. So everybody used to tease me about that. But most of all, my mother took in ironing. She did a lot of laundry for dentists or doctors. She did the laundry for them. I remember I had to deliver them for her. And she would iron and wash and iron them. And then my father was the town custodian, Prospect Street, police headquarters, and the courthouse. And I used to have to go down there and help him to take the flag down every day. And I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning with him and deliver newspapers. Newspaper delivery was our childhood wages. We would deliver 40, 50 papers for $2.50 a week on a bicycle. I went to deliver papers in the morning before school, after school, and on Sundays too. And by the time I got to Roosevelt Junior High School, I was asleep in class the first period. But that was the way we worked, how we made our living pliable in doing different things in the town of Westfield. Newspaper delivery and carrier taxi.
Thank you, Wallace.
My mother did domestic work in Westfield. She worked for a number of different families. In between doing the domestic work, she worked at the hospital, Muhlenberg, and also she worked with RCA out in Somerville. That was her last job, the job that she retired from. She had a medical disability. I was laughing because I did the newspaper thing too, and it was necessary. You know, we ate, you know, well with that. And I also worked on the garbage truck when I had time, during the school year, the holidays. But in the summer, I worked the whole summer on the garbage truck.
My father worked for the Westfield Post Office, and he was responsible for opening up the post office every morning at 4:30. And he did that for many years. I don't know how long, but and my mom was more or less a stay-at-home mother. And I can remember my dad, if it was a lot of snow, he didn't bother to try to get the car out the driveway. He walked down to the post office to make sure it was open at 4:30. And the one thing I remember is that my two brothers they knew he came home for like a break at about 10 o'clock. And when my father got home at 10 o'clock, my brothers had shoveled the car out for him. My mom didn't have to ask. They just knew, Daddy's gonna be home, we gotta get this car shoveled out. So I had a great family life. Thank you.
Yeah, my mom didn't work, because I came here when I was 22 years old. And my dad worked for Manhattan Rubber. There were many industrial companies in Passaic, Manhattan Rubber, US Rubber, all those factories. So men always had a job. There weren't too many women working way back then. My sisters graduated from Passaic High School and went on to go to either a business school, or my sister graduated from Jersey City Medical Center as a nurse. So that's about it. Mom didn't have to work. She took care of my sister's kids when they went to work, and I came down here to take care of my brother. So that was why I'm still here.
All his fault.
Yeah, all his fault, right.
Thank you, Mary. My next question is, did you go to a church or other house of worship in Westfield, and what was it like?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, going back to my great parents, they spoke with the Quakers, and that's how St. Luke's Church was formed. And I used to go to Sunday school at St. Luke's, and then later on, I would go once in a while. My mother was a member at St. Luke's along with my aunt, and I would visit Bethel, but basically the Methodist was my Sunday school. And when I joined the United States Marine Corps in 1951, on my way to Korea in 1953, I joined the Second Baptist Church of Los Angeles and became a born-again Christian.
My mother belonged to Bethel Baptist Church. She was a deaconess there and had other roles. Church experience for me in Westfield was very interesting because I was very, very involved with Jesus. I learned to love Jesus, and I still love him through my church experience, but it was through the behavior of the people in the church that my faith at that time evolved. And that was my experience of Bethel Baptist Church at that time. It was very principled, very strong individual, very hardworking people. It really was the cornerstone of the community, the church in very real ways.
Thank you, Ron.
I was baptized in Bethel Baptist Church, and 60-some years later, I am still there as a member. Church is very important. My dad went to church every Sunday. If my mother couldn't make it, my dad was always in church. We had an anniversary book that we had about a few years back, and I looked and I think all the pictures that date back somewhere between the 30s and 40s. My father was in that picture because he loved church. He taught us to love God, and my mother, we had a good Christian home, and as a result of this, I have 2 brothers that are Baptist ministers. Thank you.
Yeah, well, all I can say is giving honor to God plays a very important part of my life. I think that church is very important. When I first came here, I went to Bethel Baptist Church. I am now a member of the Shiloh Baptist Church in Plainfield. The reason I left Bethel is because we opened a restaurant in Plainfield, and it was very hard to get back there. So Reverend Thomas, who was the minister of Shiloh Baptist Church, would come to the restaurant, and he said, well, daughter, where you go to church at? And so we finally, my husband and I joined Shiloh Baptist Church, and that's where we attend now.
So I've asked a few questions, and thank you so much for your responses. But I'm not perfect, and I'm sure I've left a lot out. So my next question is what would you want to share about your experiences and your memories growing up in Westfield that I haven't asked about?
Well, I have to tell a story. And this story is a great story, too. As a newspaper boy, in grade school, junior high school, so forth, I became the newspaper delivery boy for Mrs. Charles Wallace, 629 Tremont Avenue in Westfield, New Jersey. Little did I know that her husband, Charles Wallace, was a scientist. And she used to invite me and so forth into the house, tell me about her husband, the scientist. But he was the greatest scientist in the field of the purification of water, called the Wallace chlorinator invention. Mr. Wallace, and they took a liking to me, and I became very familiar with Mrs. Wallace. And school in the Westfield Community Center, Mrs. Wallace met with the Mary McLeod Bethune. She'd been a benefactor in the town of Westfield. And Mrs. Wallace and the Eljabar Foundation, which is her 3 daughters, Elizabeth, Jane, and Barbara, they also took me in and sort of like adopted me. And I was really blessed to have someone like that as a friend. Mrs. Wallace, and her memory is forever embedded in Westfield philanthropic circles. The fund of New Jersey is the greatest philanthropic fund in the state of New Jersey, all because of her husband's invention of the chlorinator machine.
Thank you, Wallace.
I like to have those Republicans who ran Westfield when I was a kid back. Westfield really was a very, in my opinion, very compassionate town. And it was paternalistic, in a sense, but it took care of its people. Its people. It was a duty. And we could use a little bit of that, I think, from our government today. And so I would like to register that. It was a very, very, very good town to me.
Are there some ways that that when you were growing up, that the town and its leaders took care of the people in the community that you could highlight, or you remember, that stand out in your mind?
I had scholarships to go to the YMCA. I had all of my sports equipment, my football shoes and anything else, glasses, all those kind of things were picked up by the boosters. Okay, the Westfield boosters were very generous, and I wasn't the only child. I was the only black child that got that kind of support. But there was a lady, Miss Hill, what's her name? Does anybody?
Ruth Hill. Yeah, I know. She took very care of us. Ruth Hill, the director.
talk about it? No, I can't talk about it because I.
You didn't either.
No.
Well, we did. But Westfield was, the secondhand shop, baskets of food. We were poor. And so the only thing I'm saying is that all those kinds of things that poor people needed in Westfield, to me, if it was identified, they dealt with it. It was a different kind of Republican, is what I'm saying, than we have today. And so it was a very giving town. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
There's nothing I really can think of at this time that I'd want to say about my experience in Westfield, except that I had a good experience and I'm grateful for it. I had a good time here in Westfield. I had minimum problems, so I think I've been blessed.
What have I missed, Mary? What haven't I asked about that you think we should know?
Well, getting back to Westfield, I can't say, raising my children, it has not been the best experience. I think that you make your own experiences, and I think that you develop things that you enjoy and that you people that you can associate with. I have had some awful experiences with the town of Westfield. My son applied for the fire department, and he was not able to get the job. He never drank, he never smoked, he was always a hard worker, and they had one person, I think they picked per every time jobs came up, and if there was two, that one was left by the wayside. So that was one experience that I felt really bad about. But being able to volunteer and able to work with the Westfield Neighborhood Council and with the Martin Luther King Association and all the other organizations, excuse me, all the other associations, the Westfield Historical Society, and being a person that really wants to do well and let people know that they are things that are not right and could do better. We're not perfect, the town is not perfect, and I think that there's things that we have to speak out about. And I think that this panel has given you some insight on what's going on, and we just try to do better. The school system could be better, the town can do better. There's so much confusion going on now with the Democratic and the Republican parties, and I think that we should try to solve things in a peaceful manner and not degrade people personally. I really do not like that, and I think that things could be better. Support people that are in office, even though you may not like them, but support them anyway if they're doing a good job. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, thank you so much. And I've asked my questions, so now I want to hear what questions you have for our panelists. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
That was for you too. How y'all doing today?
Great.
Thank you very much. I'm here to support my uncle who's on the panel, Mr. Brown. Thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you for coming. One thing I say, the decline of our country is, since we're technological, we have lost the heart and the humanity of appreciation. So one question I want to ask you, because this is something I ask my uncle all the time, what was community like when you grew up? Because I detail community from today to my childhood. Today's community is so individualistic. We don't even have conversations. We're in people's faces. You could be, I don't want to say selfish, I'd say individualistic. Because now we have people who can sit at a dinner table at a family and everybody on the phone. that don't have a conversation. In school, it's the same way. Before that, with the introduction of technology, more people stayed in the house because now we have the internet and not conversation. When I was younger, we had outside time, be in the house when the lights come on. Before that, there was more music that was together. There was less people trying to take advantage of us through entertaining than today, right? So with the advent of the things that destroyed our communities, individualism has destroyed not only our sense of importance, it's also has destroyed our sense of faith and love. So from your experience, I would like to know, what was community like back then, and what made you appreciate your part in the community as you grew into your adulthood and your responsibility in it?
I would like to say that, like my mother said, God does not like ugliness. And ugliness, of course, is sin and all the bad things that you do to one another. And if you really want to get along with somebody, you got to get to know them. You got to get to know them. You can't follow what you think. You have to abide by what you know about them. And that'll prevent a lot of misunderstandings.
I think that the community, the difference in the community when I was growing up is that roles were set and you played your role. But if you played your role, then you were okay. And it was a tribe. Maybe it's a better a way of describing it. As long as you did what you were supposed to do, okay, things went smoothly. If you didn't do what you were supposed to do, like if you tried to hang out with folks that didn't look like you, then you had a problem. You got caught between communities, which is what basically my experience was, is that I was accused of being an Uncle Tom because I had white friends on the one hand, and I was accused of trying to be smart by people because I wasn't supposed to be, because I was black. And that was the dynamic that went through my, my entire childhood, is that constant back and forth about what was your role. But when the community said it, when you finally found where you were, then everything was cool. And it was embracing, but it was a very, very difficult, my experience was very difficult in Westfield, trying to be, as this gentleman was just alluding to, an individual. Westfield wasn't crazy about individuals, I felt, back then. I see a nod. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
I was sitting here thinking about growing up in a community where I lived on West Broad Street, down the street. There were a lot of our friends were all there, and we had a tendency to all play together. Our parents were friends, so if your kid did something that they shouldn't have, my mother would find out, or she'd call and say, so and so. And I think the fact that the parents were friends, and all of the children in the neighborhood, we all went to church every Sunday. We were all there, and I think the fact that it had to do with the parents, how the community was. The parents were on one accord, and we were all friends, and it continued until we grew up. We were all friends, and I think the parents had a lot. As I said earlier, that when we were playing, everybody knew at 5 o'clock to go home because it's dinner time. Back then, everybody sat down at the dinner table at the same time. It wasn't the case of I gotta go this. We didn't have telephones that interrupted dinner or anything like that. So I think it had to do with the parents, how we grew up. We were raised that we we knew if we did something wrong, somebody's mother's gonna call and tell my mother. You know, our community, again, everybody was together. We all went to church together, and we all went to the same school together, so, I just, again, I don't see a problem. I think it's sitting down at the dinner table with your mom and your dad, and having talk about things. My father was always very, would have something interesting to say all the time. So we were kind of, always asking Dad, what about this, what about that? So I think that helped us in the community.
Well, I would like to say I sheltered my children from a lot of things that went on in the town. They never knew that people were prejudiced because they had friends that, because they went to Grant School, to Mopper School, and they also went to Columbus School. So they didn't realize that some things were going on because my husband and I sheltered them from that. But I think that I sat under Mayor Jardine, I sat on the planning board, and I realized that your zip code means a lot. Where you live means a lot. And I think that if people don't speak out and tell what really happens, we're still going to be living underneath a cloud. And there's things going on. I know it, you know it, and everybody that lives in Westfield knows it. And some of the things that go on are not right. And I think that this panel has been a very diverse panel. Joyce has spoke about the people on West Broad Street and that zip code up there. And I think that I've said it many times, by living on Caciola, you're labeled. People years ago when I first moved to Caciola, people would not even come on the street because it was labeled as a undesirable place to live. And so I think that as long as we have these type of meetings and these type of open discussions, it is healthy. So I think that it's really been an honor to speak out about things that are going on, and we can learn from each other.
What other questions do we have?
I don't need that. Does anyone know anyone who lived in Turkey Swamp? It seems like such a mystery, and you all described where you lived, but I am wondering about Turkey Swamp and what was known to you or understood about that area.
You have to join us for our we're having a program in a couple weeks about that topic. So I hope you'll join us for that because I know Rob, who's in the back, has a lot to say about that.
I really appreciate everyone sharing, your personal experiences. I'm curious, when you were living in Westfield, did you ever discuss moving from Westfield, or did your parents ever discuss moving somewhere? And you still live there. And you've been through a lot, you've seen a lot, but have you, did you think about it, moving?
Moving is worse maybe somewhere else than here.
Yeah, that's right.
So, hell is hell. Heaven is heaven.
After I graduated from college, I started my professional career. So I've lived in about 8 or 9, different states, near 3 or 4 major cities, and I've worked in 4 or 5 different industries. So I've been around, okay. And I came back to Westfield, okay. And I've been back here now for about 12 or 13 years. And I've been involved through our mayor and 3 of our major committees, Lifelong Westfield, the mental health committee. And the reason I'm saying it is this: I gathered all those experiences in the places that I'd seen, and took the best that I could from those places, and I've tried to bring it back to my hometown. You know, because I love the place.
If you want to, yeah, I think you have a question that's related to this.
Actually, you actually gave my question in the beginning, but I wanted to make some comments, okay? I was in the class of 66 with Ronald. My grandmother was born here in 1891, okay? We've been here for 3 generations. Her parents started Bethel Baptist Church in 1890. They came out of, I believe, the Baptist church here. So there was about 13 people that started Bethel Baptist. It wasn't called Bethel Baptist at that time, but my grandmother's father was the first trustee, chairman of Bethel Baptist. As far as experiences in Westfield, I was a volunteer for the American Red Cross. We used to wear gray and white uniforms to go to the Veterans Hospital in Lyons. We also went to Muhlenberg. I went with them for a week down in Hoods College in Virginia, where they had a week-long training session with bringing girls and boys throughout the country. I don't remember the exact date, but maybe, I'm sorry, if Mary can help me with this part, I don't really know. Do you know the name Teddy Powell? Teddy Powell was a black person who was black and looking. His wife was either really light or she was white. They wanted to buy a house on Lawrence, off of Lawrence, thank you. Bethel Baptist members picketed for them to get that house. Okay, that's how good Westfield is. In school, I went to McKinley, I went to Thomas Edison, and to the high school. I think we were the first graduating class out of Thomas Middle School, but I'm really not sure about that. As far as being a kid in Westfield, the police department, through the POW, they used to take kids to the circus in New York. That's the first time I went to Farling Valley Circus. They took kids other places, but I didn't got to go to the circus. My mother didn't let me go to the other places. So what can I say? As far as our graduating class, Frida Thompson was in my class. I kept in contact with her in and out for the last, not really that steadily. Her father was Dr. Thompson. He was my dentist. He taught at the University of Medicine and Dentistry in Newark. She graduated, I don't remember what school, somewhere out west. She was a GYO doctor, and she, I believe, retired in the last 2 or 3 years. And she still lives out there. So Mr. Morrison, his picture's up there. His son also volunteered here, well, not this building, but the municipal building, as a library page like I did through high school. So we did have some good things, but I also remember I was like one of the only black persons in some of my classes. I call it tracking. I don't know what you call it these days. Black kids were put in secretarial classes or trade classes, and very few college classes. And I don't know if it's still done now or not, but I understand what Mary was saying about her children. During World War II, my father was in the Navy. My mother drove cab in Westfield. She also did cleaning of certain buildings, like where the Singer sewing machine place was. And I think that's about what I wanted to say. Oh, and my grandmother's brother was in World War I. You weren't the first person in the service. And he was in France for a period of time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to piggyback on what you said, but first I want to say thank you to the panel. This was fabulous, wonderful. These are the kind of conversations we need to have in 2020, in the 21st century, and get us moving into the future. And I want to say that shame on Westfield for the years of redlining and the years of tracking. Because this is true, this is history. And we have got to bury this history and move forward into a more multicolored world. Basically, that's what I wanted to say. So, and again, thank you, panel. It was, oh, one more thing I want to say. It is also a shame that we have not been able to elect an African-American person to the council, to the Board of Education, and this is what we need to start working, all of us in this room. We're obviously all here because we believe in a multicolored world, and we need to have power that way. That's the way you get power in this world, by working in the governmental area. So this is something we need to start moving forward for. But I do want to recognize Danelle Carr, and I do want to recognize the great Melba Nixon, who were appointed and could not get reelected into those positions. So we need to move in that direction. Thank you, and thank you, panel.
And thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
My grandson used to come to your house for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So thank you so much for speaking out.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, I'm Carol Nixon. This is Nixon's daughter. I just want to thank the panel so much for today, for telling your history. As many of you know, I have a son that is now just graduated from college but grew up here in Westfield. And what he found was he didn't know about our history. And so it's so important to bring our kids along, to teach them what happened in the past, and then so they can build on it and develop the self-esteem they need to move forward in our society, because our history is, African-American history here in Westfield is Westfield history, and it's an amazing history. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I just want to correct Lisa for a minute. My mother was elected to the Board of Education. And again, sometimes, again, because we're not continuing this process, we forget what has happened in the past. And when Isaiah, my son, was doing his research on the Black Professional Zone, he actually found out that Dr. Brock had run for council position all the way back then. Oh, I'm sorry, my phone. All the way back then, you know, many, many years ago. But we need to have our children know that this happened in the past, and that they can build on this and create their own future. Thank you.
Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for being here. I am not from Westfield. I'm from Scotch Plains. And I was wondering if there was, as your families were coming up through the generations, if there was any interchange or contact with the surrounding communities that had a Black population. And that's it, because we have, I don't want to say similar, but you know, I grew up in the Scotch Plains, you know, school system, and I saw a lot of the, you know, racism, you know, classifying kids. But I also had Black friends, and you know, and in our community, everybody was located in one area, and now they get bused to more affluent communities, as they did when I brought my son up here. But I just wonder if you had, in your generations, had contact with other communities to help each other out, to share common histories, because you guys are like not that far.
Well, Mr. Nuttingham, in fact, one of your schools was just named Mr. Nuttingham. One of the middle schools, I believe it is. He used to come to our center and engage with some of the programs that we had there, and such a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. He was in the aviation field, and was a wonderful experience to meet him and
May I say something?
Sure.
Scotch Plains should be congratulated because it has done more towards getting things equal. And they started with the Shady Rest Country Club.
Yeah, I have a friend.
Preserve the Shady Rest. Scotch Plains, the municipality did so much in the government in Scotch Plains that I'm so proud of Scotch Plains, its mayor and so forth at the time. They started to preserve the Shady Rest Country Club because that was real black history there.
Can you tell us about it?
Only a little bit from what I remember. In 1921, Shady Rest Country Club was acquired by the Progressive Realty Company of Westfield, New Jersey, basically. Dr. Brock here was one of the investors in that company. The doctors and the dentists, so forth, at the time could not play at the Westfield Golf Club, which was the name of Shady Rest. The Westfield Golf Club would not allow them to play. So they sued, and they won the lawsuit. And an attorney for from the Improved Benevolent Protect Water Elks of the World attorney won the lawsuit against the Westfield Golf Club. And that's how Shady Rest came into the hands of African American. And it became the first African American club of its kind in America. Today it is a National Historic Site in the township of Scotch Plains. And we owe that to the municipality that did this because it was a great deal that it did. I, as a kid, used to be outside there. My brother had a house right down the street from Shady Rest, Jerusalem Road. Yeah. And I'm saying to myself, you know, people can get along together when they get to know who they are. If you think about who they are, you're not going to get along. You got to know who they are. And there's a poem out there called He Who Knows Not. He who knows not, he knows not, he knows. He is asleep, awaken him. But he who knows not, he knows, he is simple. You got to teach him. But he who knows and knows that he knows, he's wise. Follow him. And always turn the coin over because there's two sides to every coin, good and bad. Now I will relate one experience of racism in the Westfield that I endured in the 92 years that I have been in this world. My childhood happened to be a white boy, asked me, why was my face always dirty? That's the innocence of a child that has to be taught racism. And I said to myself, it didn't bother me. And then the second incident, the football team usually goes to this ice cream parlor on East Broad Street after the game. They didn't want to serve me, so the whole team, we all walked out. Those are the only two incidents of racism that I experienced in Westfield. But my great uncle, Charles Mulford, going back to the John C. Williams family, our first ancestors here in Westfield, the Westfield school system was so great that it was the model for the United States of America. And so if you get an education in the town of Westfield, you can go to any college in the United States. So education is important. My great uncle says, stay in school, seek a skill. And that's what I tried to do. But I learned later on that you become an Oreo. An Oreo. What's an Oreo? I asked the guy, what is an Oreo? He said, oh, you're black, but you think white. How the hell do you think white? Oh, because you're educated. Oh, that's it. Now, this is what someone had told me. He was from the South, and we were working at the Internal Revenue Service in Newark, and that's when that question was asked for me. But as I said before, there's that only 2 incidents in the town of Westfield. I had many of my team players, football team. I played against some of the greatest players that are there, Rosie Greer and all of them. And I said to myself, you know, hey, you just got to keep on keeping on. Follow what you know, not what you think. Turn the coin over and look at the other side, because there is another side to the story. And if you do that, you'll get along with a lot of people.
The exhibit, the athletic exhibit, one of the things that I'd like folks to consider is if you've had a relationship with an athlete or know of an athlete, black or white, that you think would be able to help us understand what's going on because of that relationship. There's tremendous empathy. I think that's the first place that you really learn empathy, is when you're on athletic teams. And so what I hope we're going to do with our exhibit and our process is along the way we're going to start getting feedback and input from people that had interracial friendships, okay? Because truly, when we talked about going to Scotch Plains, I went to Richwood, okay? So when I went to college with my academic performance, I scored the 99th percentile on the state test that they gave in Pennsylvania for cultural acclamations because of the people that I live with and that I dealt with on a daily basis. We learn from each other. So I'm with Wallace on that. I think that's something we really need to put a little bit more focus on. You don't have to travel to deal with different cultures. Deal with the people that you're living with right now. So.
I want to be respectful of the panelists' time. Thank you so much. Do we have one more question for our panelists? Or, well, thank you so much. I really, I have so much appreciation for our panelists for being up here, for sharing your experiences, both the positive and the things that we need to work on. I know how much goes into that and the vulnerability of sharing that. So I thank you so much. I thank you all for being here and attending. As a reminder, our next event will be Monday night, 6 to 8 p.m. We'll have an open exhibit in here, so I hope that you'll join us. We'll be showing one or two of the films that Isaiah created. So thank you again, and have a great day. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to say, on next Saturday at the Westfield Neighborhood Council is going to be a breakfast, and it's from 10 to 2.